Hey everybody, it's Shizug and welcome back to Breaking the Deadlock. Today we're doing a lost lane recovery guide. We're trying to figure out what we can do in lanes that are not going so great and how to make them turn around into our favor in the late game. We're going to take a look at a replay from Zergy. His Twitch is going to be in the description. I was watching his stream recently and saw this replay and thought it was a perfect example of how to show this off. We're going to look at another one of his replays in a little bit too, but his stuff is down in the description. We're going to see how Zergy takes this horrific laning phase and turns it around and becomes the richest hero in the game by the end of the game. We're going to look at a couple different topics. We're going to look at the laning phase and see how he positions himself and how he still secures farm during the laning phase despite it going so poorly. And we're going to see how he transitions into the mid game, and we're going to see how he focuses on getting his souls up despite being so poor from the start, and we're going to see him make that recovery as we go along. The first thing I want to cover before we get into the mechanics and the technicalities of it is I want to cover a little bit of the mentality that you need to have. This is a little bit of superficial advice, but I think it's extremely important to put at the beginning of this. If you sound like this in your game,
like literally, I'm bro. What is wrong with you?
or even this, or even this. The first thing you need to get in check is your mentality. Especially while watching Zergy stream, he stayed extremely positive despite these things going on. Getting totally destroyed in terms of souls, in terms of kills, Zergy stayed very mentally strong throughout this game. He was kind of making jokes, he was staying positive, and he never once was tilting. And I think that it's important to stay and keep your head on your shoulders in these games. You have to remember that you are one of 4 lanes in this game, and just because yours is going bad doesn't mean that everyone else is. And don't expect anyone else to fix your situation for you as well. This is on you to fix, and don't expect help from others, and although help might arrive, this is on you to try to solve, and it is you as a solo player, you can make this turn around. So now we're going to notice that Zergy is going to start playing very safe. He is down on souls, he's 1,000 behind, he doesn't have an item yet compared to Kelvin, who has 3 at this point, and we're going to see him farm the small camp instead of shoving up under the bridge. And I think that this is a really good move to make. Taking the safe farm that's next to your tower is the best option. You don't want to, especially when you're already dying to the opponent laner, you already know that you're not in a place that you can harass or really get kills. So I think it's a good play to take the safe farm and not push too far forward. But here we see he moves up a little bit and he's trying to poke a little bit. He's trying to get some denies where he can, but nothing's really going to happen and he should start thinking about playing safe again. And that's what he's going to do. So here's a pretty critical moment. Note his positioning so far behind the tower, and honestly taking this trade is not even worth it for him. I'm surprised he's actually taking this. But his goal is to just try to get any source of souls that he can. He's 70 HP and he's going to get dove here in a second because he is so low and the Kelvin knows it. But his only goal in lane is not to try to kill Kelvin anymore. He knows he's not killing Kelvin. He's just trying to extract any kind of net worth he can from the lane, and he wants to make sure he gets out of this lane with as much as he can without trying to feed anymore. So if we look down at the bottom, we're noticing he's going to have a large gap where he doesn't die anymore, and that's because he goes into like crisis control mode, right? He knows that if he shows up at lane and he tries to defend this Guardian, he's going to die anyway. And if he dies anyway, he's not going to get any souls, and he's just going to give the Kelvin more. It's not a great situation for him. So what he does is he opts to go and hit crates and golden statues for extra souls around the map. And note his positioning yet again, he's super far back. He knows Kelvin's over there, but he doesn't want to engage with him. He's intentionally minimizing interaction with people that he knows he's going to lose trades with. So here he goes, he's going to hit more golden statues, he's going to look for crates to hit, and he sees that Kelvin's on the map, he sees him in the adjacent lane, so he's going to take the opportunity to shove his lane as much as he can. He knows the Kelvin's not here, that's the threat, and he's going to take as much advantage of this as he can in that time. He sees Kelvin rotating back on the map. He's keeping an eye on the map during this time, and he's now rotating back and he's going to hit more crates where he can. This is safe farm for him to take before the jungle camps come up, and this is a good way for him to get back in the game, even though he's not going to become the richest hero in the game off of doing this. This is a good source of souls for him to at least close that gap where he can't exist in the lane anymore. I notice where the troopers are meeting in this lane. They're actually under the enemy Guardian, and he can't really push up that far without risking his life. And at this point, he is in damage control mode. He wants to stem the bleeding on this lane. He doesn't want to die anymore, so he's doing what he can around the map without overextending. His main goal right now is not to die. We see him rotate to this adjacent lane to use the shop and maybe stick around for some extra souls from some of the troopers that are here, but he's going to rotate back over to his walker to make sure that it's defended, even though it means showing up against the Kelvin. On the way back over to his walker, he makes sure to take opportunities to hit golden statues and crates yet again. Small amounts of souls, but they add up at the end of the day. And a little bit of a misplay to be this far forward against the Kelvin, but he quickly recognizes that and backs up. He's not trying to kill the Kelvin, notice. He's absolutely focusing on the wave that's here and the souls that can come from it. He's going to hit him a little bit because he knows his damage does splash damage, but notice where he's positioning again. All he needs to do is hit this trooper for the last hit, and then the soul after the fact. This is also a really important concept to grasp, is that you don't need to be next to the creep to last hit it. You can be super far away, and all you need is those 2 bullets, the one when it's in its death animation, and then also the soul that comes after it. You don't need to engage with the Kelvin to get those last hits, but you do need to defend that walker. So there's a small replay bug where 7 minutes hasn't quite happened yet. We haven't seen the neutral spawn, but they're about to spawn any second here. And what we're going to see is that he immediately transitions into jungling. We've seen him taking safe farm in terms of crates the entire time, but now that safe farm exists in the sense of neutral camps, and he's going to absolutely go and take those instead. So see, the map lights up. He immediately beelines it to this camp, and he's here to farm it. So when in this recovery mode, your priorities need to be in line, right? You're in damage control mode, you don't want to be dying, but you still want to defend Guardians where you can. You still want to be useful to your team. You can't just go farm, as we talked about before, the loser camps down in the bottom. We talk about that in my snowballing video where we watched Team McLS actually snowball their games. We don't want to farm too far backwards, but if we're in a losing situation like Zergy is right now, it's all right to go hit them. But you have to remember that your #1 priority is still to defend your buildings, defend your Guardians, defend your walkers, but also try to get souls from the map at the same time. When you're this weak, it's really important to realize that your place in the game is not the one to get kills, but rather to go farm and catch up. And I would like to point out too that this is definitely a 7 focused kind of mindset. I think that going back and hitting crates and getting golden statues is fine, but I think 7 especially, like you're going to see him ult this camp in a second, I assume. 7 is yeah, here we go. 7's a hero that can quickly catch up on farm. He can go farm this large camp at 8 minutes, at 9 minutes, and it's efficient for him to do so, but not all heroes can do this. If you're playing Vindicta, you might want to play around your Guardians and look for fights to get money off of your Assassinate or something like that. So it's also important to play into your hero's strengths as well, because 7's strength is that he can efficiently hit jungle camps, so that's what Zergy does. He takes full advantage of that. But look at what this net worth lead looks like now. We saw him, he was super far behind on Kelvin. The Kelvin had over 2k souls on him at points, and now he still has 2k souls, but that ratio of souls is much smaller. And now we'll see Zergy go to the left side of the map, yep, and he's going to clear out the camps there. And this is he should be taking the safe farm. It makes sense. He's the lowest net worth hero. He's a hero that can scale well with farm, so it makes sense for him to play safe. So note this moment coming up here. We see that Zergy's farming this large camp. He leaves the last creep in the camp and he goes to rotate and defend his walker instead. And I think that this is a really important mindset to have, is even if you're losing, even if you're behind, if you have the capability to defend a Guardian, especially if you have a teammate that's going to show up like this Infernus does, it's your job to go defend that walker. It's your job to defend the Guardian, and that's okay. As long as you're not going to die for it, this is the right play to make. And we'll see him rotate back over to that large camp, I assume, and finish off that camp as well. So here we're about to see him prioritize lane troopers over the neutral creeps instead. He goes and he pushes out this wave instead of farming the other camps that are backwards. And he's going to go backwards to those camps now, but he made sure to apply a little bit of pressure onto that side of the map instead before he backed off. So when you're behind as a hero like 7, what can you do? First off, in lane is you want to minimize interaction with the opposing laner. You want to stay super far back. You want to plink away at the enemy troopers that are in range, and you want to get the last hits and the souls and maximize whatever farm you can get out of it without dying. You really want to mitigate the dying that is going on. Secondly, when 7 minutes hits, you are mode farm and you want to get back into this game and you want to find souls wherever you can on the map and make sure to extract the farm from the map if no one else is going to do it. So that's a large part of your job, is to not make your situation worse, not die over and over, but rather find farm on the map and make sure to soak it up. At this point, we've seen that Zergy has made a pretty full recovery. He's at equal or even higher net worth than a lot of people in the game. So we're going to go and we're going to take a look at a different game that Zergy played as Vindicta. Alright, so here we are looking at Zergy's perspective yet again, and we're looking at a duo lane. His duo just goes down, and now he's alone under the Guardian. We see him take some pretty far steps back behind the Guardian, and we see him playing safe, and this is not Vindicta specific. This isn't because Vindicta has extra range or something like that. This is what you should do in this situation. You should play really safe and fall back. His Guardian goes down, but that's okay. He wasn't saving it in that situation anyway. And it's okay to not die for that Guardian. There's no point if you die for it, you're not going to get anything out of that map. So it's smart for him to go back and play it safe. We see him rotate over to the adjacent lane to buy as well, just like he did in the previous game. He goes to an adjacent lane, he kind of makes some kind of gank, he tries to get some resources out of the map, and actually in this situation, as a Vindicta, he's going in for kills and he's trying to look for money from his snipes. So he's fighting with his team where he creates an imbalance with his teammates and they overwhelm a certain lane. We see that the Shiv and the Yamato that he was previously laning against, they don't rotate, they don't go and push the walker, so this is a good rotation from him to go over to this adjacent lane and try to get some snipe kills and create this imbalance on this side of the map. So Zergy's playing into his hero's strengths. Yet again, Vindicta likes to go for these early fights, likes to snowball off of those assassinate kills. So he's playing into that and playing active on the map instead of the 7 kind of mindset where you want to go play safe and go look for neutral creeps and stuff like that. It's 7 minutes, neutral camps have spawned, and we see Zergy do the same thing again. He goes and he makes sure to farm up some of the neutral camps. When you're behind, it's okay to go hit these. It's okay to minimize the detriment that you're adding to your team and maximize the potential impact you can through farm. You don't want to go in and go push a lane and go die. Like, that doesn't make sense for him to do that right now. So what he's doing is he's maximizing his power through gaining souls and not giving the opponents the souls that from him dying instead. So we're going to see him rotate around and farm camps, but notably also as Vindicta, he's playing towards the middle of the map. This is kind of playing around that hero's strength where he has assassinate, he wants to join fights from afar. He knows that his hero can still have impact in the fights, so he chooses to play where there's potential fights that are going to happen and lets other heroes farm that are more suited to. So what lessons do we learn from watching Zergy play? I think we learned 2 things. In lane, it's your job not to keep feeding. If you've died a couple times, it's okay. You want to stem the bleeding on lane and make sure to get what souls you can without dying to the opponent laner. To do that, you play super far back, or you just simply hit crates in between and you let them take the Guardian. It's better to not feed all the souls to the opponent laner rather than fight for a couple creeps and then end up dead. When you're dead, you're not farming, and there's no souls that you can be gaining, but at least if you're alive, you can be hitting those crates in between, you could be plinking away at the troopers that are far away, and you're able to still extract some kind of value from that lane that has been lost. Additionally, once the laning phase is over and 7 minutes hit, we've seen 2 scenarios, whereas 7, he was hitting the very, very safe farm that was on the edges of the map, and that's because of, yet again, the specific hero characteristics of 7. He really likes farm, he was extremely poor in that game, and then with a game that's more even as Vindicta, you saw he played the middle of the map, he took some of the greedier farm where it was gankable, and he fought a lot. Through minimizing deaths, he was able to continue to stack up souls and not make the situation worse for his team. And lastly, we learned a little bit about attitude when it comes to losing a game. If you keep your head in the game, it's very possible to make a comeback. You're one of 6 players on your team, and just because your lane went terribly does not mean that everyone's went terribly. And if you keep your head in the game, it's possible that you can turn that game around and even make it into a win. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you learned something from this VOD review and you can turn around some of your own bad lanes. I'm interested to see what other topics y'all would want to learn about. I'm always reading the comments. I read still every single one of them. I'm not interacting with every single one of them, but I'm reading every single comment and I'm taking y'all's feedback into mine, and I'm curious to see what topics y'all would want to see next. So leave a comment down below with something that you want to hear from and see from, and I'll make it happen. All right, everybody, have a good one.